Hello, welcome everybody. This is the first time we've done Peccadillo Sofa Club in the flesh. Thank you for coming. Bravo. Very exciting to be in the big town with you all here at the BFI Flair Film Festival. We've got some fantastic guests today. We've got Rhianna Ilube, we've got Dee Smith, Trevor Anderson, and we've got Rocky Roggio. Please welcome them. So if you don't know what a film festival's like, it's basically where creative people release their children upon the earth and you see how the child behaves. Often the child can take on a life of its own. It can start behaving in ways you don't expect. It can get up to mischief and do things that you didn't predict. And the joy of the festival circuit is that you just kind of try and keep up. So we're really pleased to have you three here. Rhianna works for the Flair Festival as one of the programmers, so she'll give us a bit of a insight into the festival and its working. Okay, Trevor.
Hi.
You're our fiction representative. 2 documentaries, one fictional feature. Let's take a look at your trailer for Before I Change My Mind.
You like your school?
Hey, space case. It's fine.
Do you even have any new friends yet?
No. Do you?
I will.
I don't wanna hurt him. I don't wanna be hurt by him. He's just a man. Or is he at all?
So you've had a prolific short film career. You also used to be a punk drummer.
That's right.
Which I'm very keen on. Very keen on drumming myself. The opening of the film, I think, has got one of the most. It's got a kind of definitive show don't tell.
Oh, great.
Lesson to it, because the joining of the costume, the production design, and your direction is absolutely perfect and punchy to tell the story. It's an amazing opening scene.
Thank you.
How did you work on it? How did you build these relationships with the crew that you work with and come up with the visuals for the film, which are so strong?
Thanks. Well, the scene that Chris is referring to is new kid arrives at school, and the idea of the movie is like nobody can tell if that's a boy or a girl, but then the conceit of the movie is that we never disclose all the way through the movie. And so, like, you can bet that day in school, kids were using gendered pronouns to refer to the new kid, and but we thought, like, what if the movie that was always off screen? And so in that first scene, we thought, okay, well, what's a great way to show that is, you were in the 80s, phys ed classes where I was from, physical education, gym classes, the boys wore this and the girls wore that. Boys wore this and the girls wore that, and the boys sat there and the girls sat there. And so we thought, like, the kid should arrive to that and be told, go sit down, right? It's that immediately that hard. But then, if the kid, you saw it in the trailer, the kid just walks to the back of the gym and sits down, doesn't choose a side, then it's done. And, there's a way to make a movie where that's the triumphant ending. But we thought, what if we start there and get it out of the way, and now you still have to survive grade 8.
Yeah. So there's I've been reading a lot of Shakespeare plays recently with twins in it. You are obviously following in the line of Shakespeare into the modern world of filmmaking. In the film, there's kind of a shadow theme of the character meeting the shadow, realizing what's within rather than just surface.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about that.
Well, you saw it again in the trailer a bit. So there's the lead kid, Robin, and then Robin meets Carter, and you saw Carter also in the trailer. And they both sort of look alike. They have the dark hair. They're visually very similar. And to the point that actually the mom of the kid who plays Carter was prepping the kid for not getting the part, because it was clear that we had cast Robin, and we were doing chemistry reads against the kid we had cast to play Robin. And when mom saw that their kid looked so much like the kid who was already cast, mom started in on, sometimes you don't get a part just because you look too much like the other actor, and it could be confusing for the audience, and it has nothing to do with your talent. And then we, gave the kid the part, because specifically, I used to write my Jungian analyst off on my taxes as my story editor. So, yes, we're in the shadow world. But it just became an opportunity to talk about twinning, and it's visually more interesting in a way. But also it let me explore that feeling that I'm sure a lot of people here remember, which is like, do I want that person? Do I want to be that person? Do I want to date that person? It gets very blurry. So this whole movie is kind of about trying to engender in the audience that feeling of like the blurriness of puberty, where like everything's a wash.
There's a showstopper in the film, Mary Magdalene, the
Yes.
musical. I found one line extremely. If Mary Magdalene had one complaint about Jesus in the film, you present it as he was too focused on his job, which I thought was an excellent line. To complain to Jesus as he's being nailed to the cross that he's working too hard. You've had huge amounts of successful short films. You also work in the film festival world. What pushed you over now into the feature world?
Yeah, well, I came actually to this festival in 2005 with my first short film, which is why it's so exciting to be back with the first feature. There's an 18-year journey between the first short and the first feature, because that's just sometimes how long it takes. But for the longest time, I couldn't get my head around writing a feature. I had all these ideas for shorts, so I just kept making shorts, and I love shorts. It's a great form, and you can do a lot with a short that you can't do with a feature. But I just couldn't get my head around writing features. And then the big lesson I learned is like, you don't have to do it alone. Yeah. And when you're done, don't try and pretend like you did. So over there is my co-screenwriter, Fish Grakowski, here with us from Canada. And when I'm writing on my own, all I can see is what's wrong with it. But when suddenly I have everything's better with a buddy, and I can see what's working, and we can focus on, hey, this is good, let's follow this. And I just my attitude gets so much better. And so now, we've got a whole bunch on the go, and we're trying to crank out the features the way I was cranking out the shorts.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting lesson, the idea of expanding the collaborative canvas when you get to bigger films.
There's this weird, pretendy thing that happens in film where it's like this idea of like the director and everything's flowing from the director, and I don't know. It's not the case in my experience. It's one of the things I love about it is that it's one of the most collaborative art forms. Though sometimes it's you in a backpack and a camera, which I admire greatly. But I'm relying very much on my crew and my cast and my collaborators and my co-writer, and I come from the theater and I come from rock and roll, and I just like a party with a bunch of friends.
Yeah, some people say that directing is just hiring the best people and leaving them alone. That is often just the skill. So can you give us any clues of what you've got coming next on your slate?
Oh, sure. Well, we're writing a new film set in like the French part of Canada in 1995, which was the year that the French province was voting on whether they should become their own country. Here we are in Britain. Yeah, so they were thinking of separating from the rest of Canada, and into that, it's not about that, the same way this movie is not about gender, but gender is functioning all the way through this movie. So into that year walks 18-year-old queer kid from the west of Canada who arrives in Montreal to start his fabulous new life despite not speaking a word of French. And then parallel to that, it's two protagonists, two parallel stories. And on the other side, we have this francophone nurse who's living in the shadow of her successful novelist boyfriend. And we go back and forth between the stories, one in English, one in French, one in color, one in black and white. It's called Goodbye Forever.
Sounds excellent. When will we see it here?
Well,
Next week?
Next week we should be done. No, I think we're at the point now where I think the script is where we can start to raise some money. So hopefully, if all goes perfectly, we could go to camera by fall of 2024, but it might take another year past that. We'll see.
Yeah. That's one of the challenges of moving the shorts to features, isn't it? The turning of the ship is so much slower.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you make a short and you don't even realize you've made it, and you go, "Oh, that's a short." Put some credits on it. Let's go to the festival. But it's not yet. So far, it's not that way with features.
Great. Thank you very much. So, Dee's got a fantastic documentary called KOKOMO City. Have I pronounced that correctly?
KOKOMO City.
Great.
Yes.
It's got a better trip on the tongue when you say it. Let's take a look at the trailer to start us off.
It's kind of funny because it's like with that moment of the car going by, like being broken down but making it sound like it's a motherfucking Mustang or a Porsche. It's like, that's what we give. We're good at being broken down, but before people see us, we have a great way of making ourselves stand out. Having that loud roar. You know, it's like we gotta be the bitch in the room with the 28 inches. We gotta be the bitch with the biggest boobs, the biggest body, you know? And it's like, but meanwhile, whether you use materialistic things to cover it up or not, are you really at peace? You know, are you really at peace with yourself, knowing that the best of you is only seen when you're a survivalist? Something like for me that I've always had to think about is the best of you only when you're seen as a survivalist, because that man that's giving you the money, that man that's helping us pay our light bill, okay? But he don't gotta worry about that, because his Stacy, his Barbara Ann, oh, trust, she's laid up. That bitch don't gotta suck a dick, flip monkeys, tickle a prostate to get her light bill paid, okay?
To me, watching the film, it reminded me of Paris is Burning. It has that similar energy of kind of bursting out the preconceptions that people have about a certain community. It kind of explodes the narrative. For me, one of the really striking things, and maybe this talks to your previous experience as a producer, is the obvious comfort that the people had speaking to you in the film. What was your journey to get there?
Well, I think that me just being honest with what my intentions were, and I think my intentions or my idea of how this film should go was refreshing to them. And there was some sort of freedom that I think as trans women, these girls wanted to be a part of. So many times in our community, publicly, we're kind of like encouraged to say certain things, certain talking points, or, you know, and what we say publicly, they're measured. So as transgender sex workers, they're hardly ever seen publicly or heard of publicly. And I just thought this was a great opportunity to have them kind of flourish.
Yeah, it really comes across the kind of force and power and resilience of the characters you've chosen to show. You making the film, you did a lot of the work yourself. You worked pretty much solo, I think, on a lot of this, which to me is fantastic.
Thank you.
I think that's exactly the way people should go. Not wait for people to give you permission.
Absolutely.
So could you tell us a bit about how you went from that kind of private spark idea alone with yourself to then actually stepping out and jumping off the cliff?
Sure. I mean, to be quite candid, I ended up doing the cinematography, the editing, the directing, and casting myself because I couldn't afford to pay anyone to do those things. And thank God, because I probably would have been an ice queen or a micromanaging bitch. So it worked out. I just argued with myself, congratulated myself, you know. But, you know, I always say the lack of opportunity or the lack of financial support really inspires you creatively. I think anyone creatively totally understands that. You know, it's great to have money, it's great to have a budget, but as a creator, you know, you're desperate and you have to reach into your gut and fight with yourself about how can I make this happen with what I don't have, and there's always a way. There's always a way. So it went from there to me being introduced to one of the most amazing producers ever, Harris Duran, who's here. And he had to clean up the mess. He had a lot to clean up. You know, I edited this film on iMovie, and he had the wonderful task of taking it from out of my hands and putting it on a professional editing software. And and it just snowballed into being here.
I think that the restriction you talk about, I can really see the creativity in the film, because the tools that you employ to tell the story and to illustrate the stories that are being told are very restricted, but there's huge amounts of variation within the way that you use them for each tale.
I mean, honestly, I didn't need much. The girls were so charismatic. They're so important. And it was important for me. It just worked out. It absolutely worked out. I had very little to work with, and I wanted them to shine. I did tell them ahead of time that there was not going to be any glam. That's what's the first concern. Well, who's doing our makeup? There's no makeup. And I want you naked half the time in the film. So, no, but there was no hair, there was no makeup, there's no lighting person. You know, it was just me, a backpack, and a camera, and looking them in the eye and says, you can trust me. I am a trans woman that I am down. I mean, I did this movie completely homeless for 3 years. I slept on couch to couch to couch to couch to couch, and I expressed to them, I'm not doing that well, but I know that your story is going to help change a lot in our community, and yeah, they understood that, and they were super excited about it.
Yeah, the relationship between you and the people that you're speaking to is so clear in the film, and it feels like a real privilege to be able to be a witness to it as an outsider. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Rocky.
Yeah.
Rocky is the queen of merchandise.
Yes.
Yes. I have presents for everybody if you want. I have stickers and pins.
I don't know if you know what the film title might be. It's 1946. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor homosexuals shall inherit the kingdom of God.
God's given us his word, and to go against that's wrong.
1946 is the first time in any language, in any translation, the word homosexual ends up in the Bible, right?
I found that incredibly hard to believe.
Who made this decision? Why did they make this decision? How did they make this decision?
Here is the famous 1946 RSV New Testament.
I found that they had left their archives at Yale University.
I think we went through 60,000 documents.
So I'm reading this for the first time.
Oh, this is exactly what we are looking for.
This is it. I was wrong, or I think I'm wrong, about what the Bible says. What is in the Bible is a behavior. It's a behavior that heterosexual people can do. Religion and politics get together.
There is a religious war going on in this country. It is a cultural war, but this war is for the soul of America.
Hey, sweetie. What you're doing is contrary to the Word of God.
The authority of the Bible is at stake.
How do we undo a lie that is so ingrained in our culture? That's the wrong trailer. It's the one without all of our morals and all of the press notices. That's why it's blank, and they asked for a blank one just in case they wanted to use it in the trailer. So what you guys missed is we won the Audience Award at Doc NYC. We were the most viewed film in all of Doc NYC history. Words not on the screen. And then our press notices, eye-opening, I don't know, IndieWire called it the film of the decade. So that's what was missed in that trailer.
A bit like with Dee's film, as soon as the film starts, for both of the films, it feels like someone's just released a bag of marbles on the floor, and it just explodes with kind of complexity and the personalities that you've chosen to show in the film. Can you give us? It's so personally charged for you, this film. Can you give us a sense of what made you take the leap to bring this to an audience and to take it from the private sphere into the public?
Sure. So that was my dad in the film, if you couldn't tell. And my dad is a non-denominational minister, and I am a lesbian, and obviously that doesn't mix very well. And so I have been trying to find common ground with my non-affirming parents my entire life. And once we found tangible evidence at the archives at Yale University that the Bible was in fact mistranslated. The word homosexual does not belong in the Bible. Those verses are talking about exploitation, sex with children sometimes. It's pederasty is what was going on in the ancient world. And it's basically when you use your power over somebody else. And so I was like, I had to stop everything that I was doing to make this movie because we have the tangible evidence to start a big conversation around this issue. And we can see how the church abuses countless minority groups, and the LGBTQ community is the next in line of a long list of others. And now, unfortunately, it's the trans community that they're really targeting, specifically in America. And so this nonsense stops now here with 1946. So that was my catalyst to make the movie. My parents still do not affirm me, and my dad is now writing a book on why homosexuality is a sin. He's digging his heels in the sand. So, yeah. But the movie doesn't have a happy ending, but it has a hopeful ending. It's very real, obviously. It's a wildly journalistic, academic, theological, relational approach to a real mistranslation. So we show the raw realness of it. But I do believe that there's enough people in the congregations, what we call the movable middle, to make a shift toward affirming the LGBTQ community and hopefully stop writing laws that restrict our humanity, basically.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you've worked in the film industry for a long time.
I have.
In many roles.
Yes. I originally was a property master for many years, and then I've done a lot of production design on major motion pictures and television shows. I was the assistant property master on House of Cards for the first 2 seasons. When Fincher left, I left. You know, it was a pretty good move, because then the show went, no, I'm just kidding. Wait, is this live? Don't tell anybody. Okay. And then I did a lot of production management. And so I know how to run a production. I've never directed a movie before. And so once I first learned of this, I was sitting in a conference with my mom and dad listening to the 1946 thing, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I have to tell this story. And so I begged Kathy and Ed, who are the researchers that went to Yale and found the evidence, to tell their story, and they said no. And then I begged again, and finally I won their trust. And I wasn't going to be in the movie myself until Sal showed up, my dad, because he was at that conference too, and I filmed it. The first one, I didn't even know about the 1946. I was just filming Kathy because I was still, again, trying to find common ground with my non-affirming parents. And so my dad asked a question that day, and it's all on camera, it's in the movie, and I invited him to continue to go with us to these conferences, and he did. And at first he didn't want to be filmed. But then we didn't hand him the microphone at the next conference, and he didn't get to ask his question in front of all of the people who are trying to have their lives be affirmed. I'm like, Dad, you have access to all of the scholars and researchers. You don't get to ask a question today. And he was not okay with that. And about 2 hours later, he signed the release form and sat down and we interviewed him. Yeah.
You mentioned to me just before we started about the way that you'd gathered support for this film,
yeah.
The way that you got it made. Can you go through that for us, for anybody,
sure.
Maybe for anybody at home or here who's wondering how you get the wheels turning
sure.
on new films?
So our film was expensive because we had a lot of travel, and we did have some crew. And our editor was probably our biggest line item, and then we had about $50,000 of licensing fees for clips that we had to purchase. And so I knew it was going to be a very expensive endeavor. And the first year, I funded it myself. I spent about $32,000 of my own money on credit cards to fund this movie, buying cameras, going to conferences, following Kathy and Ed. The man who wrote the letter did just die in January, but he was 86 years old when we found him in Canada. And he penned it with an alias. It was really hard to find him, but it took about 9 months. We found him and interviewed him. So I was like, I have to travel and tell this story because who knows how long David's going to be with us. And I'm so grateful that we did get a chance to interview him, and he's in the film as well. But so since I knew how important this movie was, I knew that there are other people out there who will feel the same way I do. And so at these conferences, I started buying booths. I put a trailer together. I brought big TVs, and played a trailer and just trying to get people's attention. That's where we did find our first round of donors. They sponsored For They Know Not What They Do, which is by Daniel Karslake. He also did For the Bible Tells Me So, which won Sundance in 2007, I think. And he's now our executive producer and mentor. But from there, I went to social media. I built a huge social media following. We've got about 25,000 followers on Instagram right now and 200,000 followers on TikTok. And just, hey, help. And we have raised about $500,000 for the movie. Yeah.
Your passion for this film is palpable, and more fool anybody who stands in your way. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I told your buddy, this film warrants global distribution in multiple languages all around the world, and we won't accept anything less.
Thank you very much. Now, Rhianna,
hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
You're here to tell us all about the festival. Now, like me, you've got quite a theatre background. So how did you enter into this world of big bucks movies?
Okay, so also, I think you mentioned theatre too. I'm from the theatre world. I'm a writer, and similar vibes. For the last 5 years, I've been kind of hustling on the theatre to get my play on, which is coming on in a year's time. But I'm also like a deep consumer of art, and I just love watching movies, film, TV, reading books, reading scripts, just anything. And over the last year, I've also, in my personal life, just been focusing a lot on building my queer community around me in London, post-pandemic, moving back to London from Berlin. And so I've just been going to so many queer events, making so many friends, especially queer women, and just talking to everyone in London that I can about their experiences. And then I saw the job advert for BFI Flair to curate the lesbian and queer women movies for the festival, and I just thought I love festivals, I love scripts, I love queer women, I just want to watch whatever they're saying. So I applied, and I think because I've spent 10 years organising events, doing theatre, watching things, and they seem to be very excited about also the ideas I had for events around films. So we had a film called Rule 34 playing today and yesterday, and we've got a workshop called Rules of Desire happening today, which I curated with somebody called Venus, who I met in my foray of making lots of friends. And Venus is an incredible facilitator, sex worker. She runs this program called Sex and Rage. So I just wanted her to come to the festival and run this workshop. So I think that they were just excited by all those ideas. And that meant that suddenly for 4 months, all I did was watch lesbian movies. And now I'm on the other side here.
Great.
Yeah.
So for people who either want to maybe come to a festival or apply to send a film to a festival, can you give us an overview of the work you've done this year, how films are selected, how you get a film to a festival?
So BFI Flair is open submission worldwide. So if you have a short, it has to be under 40 minutes. Feature, I guess, over 40 minutes. And the way it works, I think there's about 6 or 7 programmers, and we all every week received a batch of the links, and we had to collectively watch every single film submitted. So we watched everything. It's kind of what gets sent to you as the first viewer is tailored. So I was getting a lot of, as I said, the queer women films, but then if you see a film that you think this is gold, or you see a film that's like, I like it, but I definitely need a second opinion. Every single film receives a second and maybe even a third watch by the programmers. And then we would meet every Wednesday for hours and discuss every film we've seen that week and what we loved, what questions we have, what research needs to be done. And so that was amazing. Like, I remember hearing about each of your films. I remember the Zoom call where it appeared and we were like, oh my gosh. And so that happened. There's a lot of WhatsApping in between as well about films. And then once you've kind of got to the shortlist, it becomes more the kind of curation aspect. So you might have, it's almost a bit similar to what you're saying about actors who look similar. Sometimes there's films that have come in that are talking about similar things, and we can say, do we want both of those films in one film? Like, it becomes those kind of questions. But what I found from doing it, it's like a very emotional process as well, watching these films, and there's a huge amount of love from the programmers. We're all like extreme nerds and like love it. So it's not like, oh, you're just like, oh, this was good or bad. Like, it's like, I loved this so much. Like, how do we celebrate it in the festival?
Yeah. I think that idea of celebrating films rather than feeling that films are in competition at all. It's just, there's room for lots of us. Okay, this year you've mentioned one film you're particularly keen on. Anything else people should keep an eye out for?
So I'm excited I want to celebrate The Chambermaid, which is, I think, is happening next week, Monday and Tuesday at the festival. And it was one of those films, when I received the synopsis, I was like, oh, okay, what? It's Slovakian, it's set in World War I, it's a huge period drama, like teen lesbian, and I was like, what is this film? Like, what am I gonna do? And then, like, 2 hours later, I'm like on the floor crying. Like, I'm like, this is an incredible film, and I'm not sure that I would have necessarily, like, out of all the films, gone and been like, I need to see The Chambermaid. But it was, I think, for a period drama, it's also so fast and funny and full of heart. And I was reading around it, and it's based on a novel, and it's based on the novelist's grandmother, who was a maid in Slovakia for 90 years and lived until 90, raising other people's children, watching World War I, World War II, and just like watching all historical events. So it's kind of based, and I guess what I want to say, we can maybe watch the trailer afterwards, but most of the films we programmed, you can just tell there's like that deep heart behind it, and so you're not surprised when you're like, oh, okay, this somehow stems from this real woman, your grandmother, and her story, because you can tell there's something extremely driven behind it. So yeah, that's The Chambermaid if you want to see it. Okay,
keep an eye out, everybody. Okay, do you have to leave us, Steve? Because you're inundated with press calls and things, or can we keep her for a little longer? Great. Okay, so now we're going to go to some Q&As. The focus goes to you. Please wait for the microphone so everybody can hear you. Just here. Here at the front, yeah.
So I want to ask about like 1946. Like what a great concept for a film. Like I was really, I feel like it really spoke to me because like I was raised Catholic, and I feel like I've always felt like a incompatibility between like my religion and my sexuality and identity. I was really taken by the concept of like exposing the politics of institutionalized religion. Yep. And like how it's got under the radar for so long that like a word that is a neologism, and that it would have even existed like at the time when the Bible was written. Like it was just like added at some point. Like it was, I had no idea. It was like the year 1946. I grew up in Spain, and like Catholic religion is like such an intrinsic part of the culture there. Like we're supposed to be a secular country, but not really. Right. So it was never like I realized after like years, like it was never an option for me to like give up religion. Like it's always going to be in the back of my culture. Yeah. So do you feel like it's compatible? Do you feel like just religion has to go? Institutional religion has to go? Is that the root of the
So, yeah, our film is not an attack on religion or God or the Bible. It's just about a real mistranslation that impacts our real reality. And you did nail it. It is a political movie, too. And one of the press called it a political thriller, or somebody did, I don't know where. I was like, oh, that's exciting. And the Pope is not helping right now either with their comment with saying homosexuality is not a crime, but it's still a sin. Awful. And they're wrong. He's wrong. I'll just say it. But nobody can gatekeep your religion. Nobody can gatekeep your communication with God. I would say if you want to hold on to your beliefs, you can absolutely do that. And I call myself a Christ follower, not really a Christian, because Christian is just such a bad name. And if really the church has got it backwards. What they're doing, they're using the Bible as a weapon to hurt people instead of giving away all of their possessions to the poor. You know, it's like the Bible's not clear on anything except for one thing: love your neighbor as yourself and love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul. And so would I want religion to go? I want the bad people who are using it as a weapon to go. But, you know, if people want to be spiritual, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. And so hold on to whatever faith you want to, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Anyone else have a question? Yes, please. Microphone's on its way.
Thank you. Hello. Before I changed my mind, what drove you to add your own religious elements into the piece? You said there was a musical about Mary Magdalene. Why did you choose that?
That's a great segue from yours. I show up halfway in the movie as like a community theater director who couldn't get the rights to Jesus Christ Superstar.
Before I changed my mind.
Precisely. Don't tell the lawyers.
I will.
We got it past them.
Okay.
So I couldn't get the rights. In real life, I couldn't get the rights. So then within the movie, my character couldn't get the rights to Jesus Christ Superstar. So my character wrote an original musical from Mary Magdalene's point of view, called Mary Magdalene Video Star, that the kids get corralled into participating in the saxophone centurion chorus, which just became an opportunity for me. Like in my life, it was the band trip, it was the community musical, it was these places where the social hierarchy of school, which is quite rigid, could shake up because we're in an upside down world. You know, art was the upside down world where the hierarchy could break apart. And but it also gives us this great opportunity to add a parody level. Because, you know, a very serious story between the kids, like, what are you, is this question that keeps getting asked in the movie, in a small and in a large way. Like, what kind of person are you is what it becomes by the end, of course, the more important question. But then there's this level of, like, Mary Magdalene saying to Jesus, like, what even are we, boyfriend and girlfriend or what? And so it can become this parody level. And I think every movie should stop halfway through and just have a musical. Call me old-fashioned.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question? Over here. Yes, please. Microphone just behind you.
Hi, two super quick questions. Have you thought about getting involved with any Italians for this? Like, have you talked with any Italian in Italy about it?
No, but I would love to.
Okay.
My family's from Italy.
We are like from Genova, but like
okay.
Between Milan and Roma. So
I've never been, so please take me.
Okay. I really like. It's hot.
Thank you.
It's hot. And what's your dream? Like, what do you want to achieve with this? Because that's like something that really.
Yeah, we created a tool to hopefully create discussions around this movie and, like I said, lead us more toward an affirming reality. And so I do want to see this film distributed all over the world in multiple languages, whether it's dubbed or subtitled, you know, and so that's where we're looking for distribution.
What about the chaos?
Pardon?
What about the chaos?
The chaos?
The chaos, I don't know what's in English, like, that it's gonna create. Like
the chaos.
Yeah.
Oh, the chaos. Oh, okay. So we already have been like smacked down. There are hundreds of YouTube videos, radio shows, podcasts. Somebody wrote a book last year called 1946 Project, debunking our movie. It's like, okay, I'm just going to write a book about a book I've never read about a movie you've never seen and tell you that you should, you know, that it's wrong. It's nonsense. And so they're spinning already. And that's a good thing. let them spin, you know? Yeah.
Now, in Italy, a lot of the cinemas are owned by the Vatican, so there's a
I hope the
challenge
Pope
there.
wasn't watching. Sorry,
Yeah.
Pope. You're wrong.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Questions, please. We might have questions from online as well, maybe, perhaps.
It's the Pope. I have a question.
Amazing.
When I was in a film called Weekend, and that film kind of came out and went, but had never come out in Italy. And then eventually an Italian distributor bought it and tried to release it. Now the film had died down majorly because of that, because of the years that passed, until the Vatican decided that they didn't want the film. And we got so much publicity and sold so many tickets because of that.
Wow.
That, like, someone needs to have a word, like, stop banning things because you make them more popular. Like, they just make these things interesting and spoken of. It's crazy. Cool.
I have two questions, one from online and one from...
Oh, great. I'll have the online, please. Thank you. Thank you. Here we go. This is for Rhianna. What's been your highs and lows of the festivals so far? The roller coaster ride.
Maybe the full thing, because it's day 3 of the
Yeah,
festival. I think they got to a point of viewing, because I think it was like 2 months of straight watching movies, and I think it got. When I say I guess my dreams got taken over by the films, and I was struggling and sometimes to sleep because the films are so heavy sometimes, and you're about them a lot, and then you have to wake up and there's still so many more films to watch. So I think then taking a break to make sure that you can sit down and watch every film with the headspace that it needs to be loved. So I feel like I've now deleted all that time from my past, and my flatmate, I'm like walking around being like, this was the best job, and it was the best job ever, but my flatmates are like, weren't you like really stressed out also? Like we saw you in December. But I think maybe a high point was the stroll, the opening night, because it was like there was standing ovation both nights, and it was just like an incredible high to see this thing that's been like mostly on Zoom and mostly being alone in your room watching things come to life. So yeah, that's so far like been amazing.
And linking to Dee's experience of making the film single-handedly and just getting it done, could you talk to us about the technical variations of the film? Because some people can just make a film with their iPhone. And it seems to me we're still waiting for the kind of revolution that I was hoping for when digital cameras came out. We still seem to be in a world where the gatekeepers are still in charge. But, you know, is there a feeling that the films coming in are feeling more owned by the filmmakers, and that the technical and the cost aspect is moving out the way?
Yeah, I think for me sometimes it's hard to know exactly how much budgets have, like how much a film has taken, but I feel like you can look at a film like Egghead and Twinkie, which was, I think, completely also self-funded by a Gen Z crew, so like early 20s, and a lot of them are here at the festival, and it is just like an incredible, well-written, funny, like DIY film that is just brilliant. So I would really recommend that. And then receiving shorts, I've seen shorts that have been like super highly produced, very, very slick, but maybe lacking that heart that I mentioned. And then I've got some shorts programs this weekend, and I'm kicking off one with Grace and Sophie, which is a short of just 2 women in their late 20s who have just woken up and found out they slept together. They're best friends, but it's set entirely in like 2 rooms. And I read that it was very low budget, but like it's just so well crafted in just a kitchen. So I think if the story and the acting and the heart is there, you can, with those shorts especially, stand out. Yeah,
it seems to me always with film that the budget is really in the quality of the idea. That's where the true value of the thing lies, and then everything else is just practical arrangement to get it to the screen. So if anybody's waiting for big budgets, so you can buy clapperboards and trailers, stop waiting. Just make the film, yeah? Put a date in your diary and start shooting. That's my advice. Any other questions? Yes? Hi.
Hi, thank you. A question for Dee. I loved KOKOMO City, fabulous. How did you find all your amazing, brilliant interviewees?
Oh, thank you. I found each girl basically roaming through Instagram comments. So I would go to like more of the popular trans girls that, you know, have huge platforms and sift through the comments for girls. And one comment led to another, and some girls was like, no, I wouldn't be interested in doing this, but I know someone that should be in this film, and that led me to Daniela, who had done 3 TED Talks. But she had the opportunity to actually really be herself in this film. She's almost unrecognizable because she's so happy and so empowered. And it didn't take long to cast the girls, which feels very undermining for me to say, but everything was aligned. Each girl was just a gift.
There's one surprising element in the film that's discussed, which is about the transformation of the body. And a lot of the girls talk about funding their transition, how they have the relationship with their body as it changes. But then they also talk about the kind of pressure of their clients demanding certain things of their body and them kind of physically becoming what is demanded. That seemed really like a shocking and quite, it made me feel very vulnerable listening to that conversation.
Well, to be very candid, a lot of, for sex workers, a lot of time men seek trans women that still have their natural anatomy when they're seeking sex workers. But for trans women that, you know, that want to be, you know, considered real women, a lot of times men do prefer, you know, pressuring trans women into having bottom surgery, which obviously is not a healthy thing to do. Like, you should have SRS because of your own volition, at your own volition, not for the sake of a man, because there are beautiful women with vaginas that men still cheat. So it's just like, I don't think you should, you know, have SRS for the sake of keeping a man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
There's one more online.
Oh, one more online. Thank you very much. Okay. This is another question for you, Dee.
Okay.
How did it feel seeing the film with an audience for the first time? And have any of the people that participated in the film seen it?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that question online. The first time I saw the film was at Sundance, and the audience was just on fire from the moment we walked in. They were trouble when we walked in. They were drunk, they were lit, they were hyped, they were so ready to go. I was like, what the hell? It's like literally you take people from a nightclub and just sit them in seats to watch this, and they were so fired up. And the girls, we flew the girls out from their various homes, and they hadn't seen the film at all. They hadn't seen one clip of themselves except the trailer that was on Instagram, and they were a nervous wreck. They were hyped, and I was nervous because I was like, gosh, you know, this feels good, but I don't know how happy they would be, how they look. I don't know. It was intense as
hell. Did they remember all the stories they told?
No. They were laughing. They were so surprised, just like the audience. Yeah. But imagine that times 10, knowing that is you, and you're just on edge, like, what did I say? What did I do? but the audience received it, you know, standing ovation, and the programmer said he'd been there for 10 years and had never seen anything like that. That really started the inspiration to know that we are onto something, and that people are genuinely drawn to this film. They don't feel forced. This feels relatable. It feels natural, and the girls are very transparent and natural, and there's just no deep, heavy, condescending talking points. It's just like you're talking to your friends, and people were so surprised by that, I think. I think they were very surprised by that, and the way I shot it, you know, in black and white, it felt refreshing, I think, for most people.
Definitely. So the film's gone with Dogworth, so hopefully we'll be seeing it out on a general release soon.
I can't wait to see it. It was acquired that night of the premiere by Magnolia, and they I mean, from 12 midnight to like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. we were, and then the next day. And then CAA happened, and then Lena Waithe comes on board as an executive producer, and it will be in theaters in July this year.
Okay.
And Dogworth is our UK distributor.
Yes, and we love them.
In the UK, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so everybody can see it in the cinema very soon. Trevor, when can we get a peek?
We are hoping to have the distribution settled by fall.
Yeah.
We're on the different track. I love this. I love that you got that. You got the whole experience.
I did.
You got the Up Till Dawn with the bidding war. I love that. Good for you. We are on the very, very slow track of that, but we're hoping to have a distribution by fall. But what I like about that is that it gives us time to then play more of the queer festivals through the summer, which is very important to me. Because the queer festival audience is a very important audience to me.
And the circuit's a bit like constantly drinking champagne, isn't it? You just go from event to event.
It's a very glamorous, very tiring, very strange life.
Yeah. It's very strange.
And Rocky?
Yeah, we're the same. We're with the Film Collaborative right now, so we can do queer film festivals. And we're going to be playing until we get distribution, and then it's a clean break. We'll stop the festivals. But
and is there a website people can find you on?
Yes, 1946themovie.com and at 1946themovie across all social media platforms.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a brilliant conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Best of luck with the films going forward. Enjoy the rest of your time in London. Rhianna, thank you so much for giving us a peek into the world of Blair. Thank you to the BFI for hosting us. Thank you to the festival. The BFI is sponsoring Peccadillo Sofa Club, and we're very appreciative to that. Next week, the show is about the most beautiful boy in the world, documentary coming from Peccadillo. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for coming, guys.
Daju! Daju!
Quel âge a-t-il?
Il a 15.
Il est très beau. Dis-lui d'enlever son boulonnet.
Det kändes som svärmar av fladdermöss omkring. Det var en levande mardröm.
そのアイドルのきっかけだったんですね。で、元祖。
That was the peak of your popularity.
And I wanted to be somewhere else and be somebody else. Jag blev väl mer eller mindre vettskrämd. Jag hade ju inga föräldrar egentligen. Så det var ju liksom mormor som styrde de här grejerna. Hon ville ha en kändis som barnbarn.
Du är ingen enkel människa, Björn. Min stora kärlek.
Förtjänar den.
Ce fut un rôle quasi mythique. Le symbole, j'allais dire, de la beauté masculine.
Återstår en dörr. Kanske vaknar jag åter. Då ska jag komma tillbaka och leta efter dig.
Like you know, to put the eyes on the beauty is to put the eyes on the dead.